Welcome to the Northern Business Podcast. Each week we talk to people who are active in business in the north of England about how growth is happening in our part of the world. We're sponsored by Virtue Motors. That's one of the UK's largest motor retailers. You can see its website at virtuemotors.com. I'm Graham Robb. I own Recognition PR. We help scores of businesses to promote their products and their services. Some feature in this podcast. Now, don't miss an episode. You can subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, or watch us on LinkedIn. We'll have a repeat throughout the weekend. Now, both of our guests today are joining me down the line. We've got Rachel Chambers, who's Managing Director at Clearsix Limited, and Marie Cooper, who's CEO at CBE Plus. Now, both these women are highly active and experienced in the field of manufacturing. They're going to give us a lot of insight into how manufacturing is really driving our economy at the moment and the kind of trends that are happening within the sector. First, if I ask Rachel, Clearsix is an unusual vehicle, a business that goes in and helps out. I was going to say troubleshoots, but maybe project assists is a better way of putting it.
Yeah, so I first ask the question, what is your problem? And usually it's commercial, operational, and I can just provide support and advice for growth. And that could be multiple things, whether it's managing particular projects, helping them with their operational challenges, their supply chain challenges as well. I guess because I've worked in a lot of sectors, I can bring that experience and support to them. And
you go in at a high C-suite level as a commercial operator or operations director, so commercial director, operations director level that you operate in. And I just want to tell our viewers and listeners that you are also one of the people behind the initiative driving the electric revolution. Now, that's centred in northeast England near Nissan. Tell people what that is.
So that was my baby really for a long time, and that was an initiative when all the net zero targets that were set by government. It was investment that was given to support the supply chain or the growth in supply chain. It was a mixture of capability and expertise, and I set up the centre in the northeast, but also ran and led the national initiative, and it was to do with kind of pinpointing where the cluster of expertise was and opening up centres in those particular areas. So we had one in Scotland, one in the northeast, one in the Midlands, and one in Wales.
Fantastic. I've actually been to the centre in the northeast. I was lucky enough to take a business editor of the Sunday Times there at the beginning of this year, and it has some very advanced equipment in the field of production for batteries, electric drives from vehicles, where concepts can be experimented with.
Yeah, we spoke to industry. So one of the key things there was understanding what the challenges were in the supply chain and then providing equipment and capability to enable scale up of support for the supply chains. So honestly, I think I spoke to about 400 companies. So I'm quite well known. But it was to try and find out actually what it is they needed and filling the gaps that you currently couldn't get in the UK, rather than, adding more capability that is still existing in the UK. So this is unique capability. We then brought in experts to look at how do you create a power electronics assembly line, and equally how would you create an electric machine assembly line, which is what you would have seen at the centre.
Yes, absolutely. And just before we leave your experience and go into the general themes and talk to Marie as well, you're also on the advisory board of a company called Clean Drive, Clean with a K. Now, this is about electrification as well. You take some of that experience. Tell us about that business.
Yeah, so I came across them during my Driving Electric Revolution days, and they'd asked me to be part of the advisory board, and that was to help them get the business growing, understanding where they can get the support from either capability or expertise. But I knew the supply chain as well. I knew where they could get that capability, so it fast-tracked it for them in a way, and I helped them look at their investment as well and their funding. But they're doing amazing things. I mean, they've driven that business originally from focusing on buses and retrofitting buses to now looking at broader sectors. they're getting a lot of challenges. I think there's investment from government for brand new buses, but not necessarily thinking about the existing buses that need to be retrofitted. And they're really on the, waving the flag to try and get that accelerated in the UK.
It sounds like a fantastic concept. Retrofitting vehicles has happened a lot in luxury cars. I mean, I think when he was Prince Charles rather than King Charles, he had an electric either Jaguar or Aston Martin that featured in Kate and William's wedding, if I remember rightly. So if luxury cars can do it, why not buses?
Absolutely.
Marie Cooper is joining us, and her business is CBE Plus, and it's based just south of Sheffield, near Chesterfield, and you can see it if you're watching the video today. Behind her, it's this very large factory, but it is multiple factories under one roof, isn't it, Marie? Tell us what CBE Plus does.
Okay, thanks, Graham. Over the last few years, we've brought together capabilities of probably 6 different manufacturing businesses, all under one roof and one brand to create an integrated supply chain opportunity. So we have machining, milling, turning, WEDM, we have electros nickel plating, and we're installing the first robotic plating line in Europe for EMP. And then we've got all the ancillary services around that where we can do assembly, material sourcing, paint spraying, heat treatment, anything that is associated with precision machining and plating originally, but whatever the customers want.
Yes, so the supplementary services like painting are very handy to have if you've got a bit of kit that you're making. Now, I was privileged to have a look round your factory a couple of weeks ago, and a very, very tidy place it is as well, all very orderly and very streamlined. And what was apparent, I won't mention the names of your customers, but what was apparent is that the kind of customers you're dealing with now are quite often at the very cutting edge of technology. I'll tell our viewers that I saw an item that was being made for a satellite going into space. And it was a relatively small item, but my goodness, the skill that was needed to produce it. Maybe if you could just explain how something like that came to you and the skills that you needed for it.
Yeah, the customer found us through challenging times of not being able to find the skills to be able to do this. And it has been 18 months, 2 years in development stages, and it is very technical. It's all to do with the material and how we machine it and how we treat it through the process. Quite complex, but it does actually excel the capabilities we've got here at CBE.
And without giving the item away, because it's not my purpose to do that, but the item was about the size of a compact disc, maybe a bit bigger. And I saw this pile of items, about like looking at a pile of CDs. And you were telling me that's worth tens of thousands of pounds, that pile of items, because it was so precision and so carefully milled out of the composite material that you give.
Absolutely. So machining time, but also the price of the material. It is really quite specialist material.
Okay, so Marie, your business has come together, and over the last few years, you've brought all these things under one roof. To what extent there does your, because you're in a supply chain now, you're a primary supplier to lots of large and respected manufacturing businesses. To what extent does the fact that you have multidisciplinary skills help you get more clients?
It's worked considerably, and it's the vision I had off the back of one customer, I'll be honest, back in 2017 when I acquired the first business. And they gave me the idea to pull the integrated supply chain together for something that they were really facing challenges with. It's opened doors, having everything under one roof. And quite honestly, plating and machining have a bit of a frictional relationship. They usually, when we've plated something, they blame the machinist if the finish is not great. So having that combination of machining and plating actually takes away the onus of, well, it's your fault, not ours. So ultimately, it's down to us to get that perfect finish and do it more efficiently and more effectively.
Okay, well, for our viewers, I'll put you both on screen now, and let's talk about some of the issues that are being faced in the manufacturing firms that you're involved with. Let's start with the challenge that you have to be innovative, to find new ways of doing things. Innovation maybe in a technical sense, like, the latest technology, but innovation also in a process sense. Now, clearly, Marie, by bringing everything under one roof, you've delivered something quite innovative in the process.
Yeah, and it's been quite challenging, but it is exactly that. It's thinking outside the box. What can we do? And the biggest challenge is actually explaining to customers what we can do and how we can actually help by what we've pulled together. And quite clearly through COVID, not being able to visualise or see or have customers to site were really challenging times to do that. But since then, opening the site and having open days and getting customers actually to come and see, the penny starts to drop and people can actually say, oh, I actually understand what you mean now, or didn't realise you could do that. And it just opens the door. So, really worked a lot on our marketing and as branding to how we actually promote what we can deliver.
Okay, now, Rachel, if you go into a business where they've got a new project or you ask them what's the problem you want them to have solved, they want to have solved by you, how easy is it to think outside the box if you're a business that's done it the same way year in, year out? And how do you encourage this way of thinking?
I guess I would say data is king. If you've got examples, which I've got plenty of, and I think the beauty of the stuff that I've done is working with universities. I mean, if you think of the leading universities, the UK has them. It's phenomenal, as well as research and technical organisations like the Catapult. So I have first-hand knowledge of things that are innovative, things that are going to work and not going to work. Not across everything. I'm not, an expert across everything, but I can bring those examples. But I think it's just getting that buy-in. So first of all, when I go into a business, it's usually through my reputation, I guess, then introductions. So there's a trust already. But it's taking time to walk around and have a look, see what they're doing at different levels, and then giving them some ideas. Most of the time, it could be just the simplest of things, like a process improvement. But I think for me, having lived in a world where I've listened to industry for so long, you get to know what is going to make those improvements. And I can even go and show them examples as well. So it's come with me to this organisation, and I want to show you actually how it's been applied as well. And that creates sometimes a partnership and collaborative approach as well, which is really helpful.
Well, Rachel, you can see Marie has adapted a new style of working based on a client's requirements and listening to what the client had to say. What do you make of that idea of having multidisciplinary factory?
I think it's amazing. I think if you can do it, you've got the space and the capability, absolutely fantastic. And one of the things I always try and encourage with the clients that I work with typically is to look at slightly different things, like why not partner with this company? And be open to different relationships, because I think you can be stronger with more capability. And what Marie was talking about then, I was kind of frantically nodding, is because I see it all the time. And if you can do it from start to finish and provide something that a customer will just be wowed with, it reduces all those complaints as well if you're doing end-to-end, rather than having to outsource a lot of it.
Now, Marie...
It's not possible everywhere, though, Graham, but I think if you can do it in-house, absolutely.
Marie, Rachel was also talking about collaboration. And one of the things I've noticed in your business, looking at the notes, was that you're a member of lots of different trade bodies. You do like to meet people who are in your own trade and learn and share experiences.
Absolutely. I've learned so much from people who have been there, done it, and wore the T-shirt over the years, or, learn from their experiences. One wise man once told me, but learn from my mistakes and it'll be less costly and less timely for you. So why would you not take that advice and waste time and money for something that you can actually talk to each other? And I've found business people want to help each other. That collaborative approach is something that I do take really seriously. Our motto is together we do more. And that works internally, because bringing 6 businesses together, 6 different workforces in itself, from a culture point of view, that was challenging, but it also brings everybody from outside the business together in as well. So why not? We all strengthen together.
Now, I want to ask you both about the big challenge to British manufacturing, which it seems to be tackling well, actually, and that is productivity. In fact, if the service sector or the public sector could replicate the manufacturing sector's productivity gains over the last 10 years, I'm sure the country would be in a better state. I don't know. I put that out for you to consider. But what are you seeing as as the productivity solutions that are coming forward? Rachel?
Oh, I think it's multifaceted. I think you've got different skill sets, integrating digital and automation, AI. I think it's quite challenging for organisations if you think of all the recent disruptions as well. But I think you've got to focus on those areas to improve that productivity, bringing in higher skilled people, getting them to adopt that technology. They're probably some of the key areas that I would think for me are going to improve productivity. And you do see it, don't get me wrong. I think the challenge I often see is probably with smaller organisations where they haven't necessarily got the investment, but there are mechanisms out there. If I think of, say, digital adoption in particular, there was the Made Smarter funding that came out from government. There probably needs to be more funding, don't get me wrong. We always want more, don't we? But I think if you look at the sort of smaller, maybe medium-sized enterprises, I think that's where that adoption is needed. You know, if I think of automotive in particular, you've got, say, tier 2, tier 3, and it's critical that they become more agile, improve productivity, and that generally will come from adopting the digital and automation.
Now, Marie, you were talking earlier about the robot you put into your electroplating plant, and there are a number of robots in your factory behind you. They're expensive bits of kit. Is the productivity gain worth it?
Yes, and it is all about achieving market values as well. Everybody wants more for less these days, so we've got to do, more with less. And it is all about doing that. And some things you just cannot do manually to that sort of level. The robot can process 1 million parts a year, which, we're really struggling to do that on a manual basis, even with resources. So the market demands what we need to do. And why would we not want to use modern technologies? And I totally agree with Rachel. It's all combination of skill sets, but it's also driving what we need to produce at the price we need to reduce it for. And I accept that technology is expensive in some respects, but it delivers what the market wants, which in turn actually gives you the revenues and the volumes that we need to drive the market conditions.
Has it been helpful having the full write-down of this as the government changed it, didn't it? So that the tax treatment of an investment was more sympathetic?
Everything all helps now as opposed to in the future, because that's the problem, isn't it? Everybody wants everything yesterday, and, most time you need to deliver it tomorrow. So, it's a big benefit for business, particularly in challenging times with, cost increases in material prices and, energy costs over the last 18 months to 2 years have been critical for business. So any support is definitely welcomed.
If I just tackle another issue that I think productivity and skills go hand in hand, and walking around Marie's factory a few weeks ago, I just got into conversation with a skilled machinist, and this man, obviously, he was working on some of the higher technology projects you were dealing with, Marie, but it's obvious he was bringing ideas to the party. He wasn't just operating as a machinist, coming to work, clocking on and machining. He was coming up with ideas on how to do it differently, and it felt very collaborative within the workforce as a way of sharing skills, and there was no resistance to the technology that you're bringing in.
It's one thing we drive, and the one thing that I've said to the guys over the last few years is, we need to be primed for change. We need to be looking for the next thing. And, they are very, very technical. So why not use their expertise to be better? I don't even pretend to even start where they are from a technical point of view. But the drive from us is to, the customer wants more, they want better. And it's one of the reasons why that project has worked is because our guys have been initiative. They've been driving the changes. They've been looking for ideas of how to actually make it work. And then we've made it work.
And Rachel, is that something you're seeing when you're going to different businesses, that approach of Marie, the ground up solving some of the productivity problems because you're getting people who want to solve?
Yeah, and if I don't see it, it's certainly initiatives that I would suggest. I think getting that engagement and people buy-in, if you're going to introduce technology, you've got to get that buy-in. You don't want them to resent that poor robot that's coming in. You want them to work with it. And And it's the plus side. I think that there's almost people think, oh, well, you're going to get rid of my job if you're bringing in a robot. Absolutely not. You're going to improve their skills because they're going to have to operate that robot. And like Marie said, the robot doesn't replace people. There are things that are needed to be done by a skilled person. And I think, the other things that I see as well is if I look at, say, engineering manufacturing in particular with skills, I'm trying to open people up to changing the perception of manufacturing. And it's still a massive challenge, getting people to understand actually the diverse and rewarding opportunities that you get in manufacturing, looking at the fact that you can start to look at digital, AR, AI, VR. And I'm also actually bringing in organisations to some of my clients that are providing blended learning so they can start to look at AR, VR capability, whether it's a VR headset, whether it's immersive technology. So you're actually getting buy-in from the younger generation as well, who are used to that. They're on the games, et cetera, and so it's trying to look at just different innovative ways of getting people's buy-in at different levels.
And I just touch on that as well, Graham, because it's one of the things that we've seen bringing the capabilities of the business together, because the automation doesn't change the skill set you need to program that machine to do exactly what you need it to do. And it was one of the conversations we had when we put the robotic plating line in, is the guys were sceptical. They did exactly everything that you expect them to do. It's going to replace my jobs, it's going to do all this. And actually, once we've started to put it in, we've had the conversations. The technical expertise of the team on plating, combined with the programming of the actual machines to do what you want it to do, has been quite powerful, because all our CNC machines have been programmed. So the technical expertise from the machining guys is they know what it needs to do and they program it. So using the expertise of the plating guys, but then using the programming expertise of the machinists to actually say, right, this robot's going to do exactly what you do manually, but it's going to do it programmed. It's opened their eyes to the simplicity of actually applying automation.
And you've bought capacity, because that robot can work in the night. It doesn't have to clock in and out.
24/7, and it don't give you arguments.
Right, now listen, I want my last question, my last theme for the discussion before we close today. It's been fascinating to hear you both. Is about the appetite for risk and investment. And Marie, you, I think, personify someone who has had an appetite because you've actually invested. It's my understanding that you own 100% of this business. How did this come about, and how did you end up owning all these shares and having all that responsibility? And what is your personal appetite for risk? It must be very high.
No. Quite honestly, it's been challenging. It's about taking opportunities. Acquiring the businesses. I acquired some of them, and the owners, they knew they wanted to exit. They got retirement plans, or they didn't really want to run businesses anymore. They've gone to the point of their skill sets where they wanted to exit. Some, they just wanted to sell, wanted to stay in, but didn't quite get the bigger picture. And, I really saw what you see behind me as the vision of the business and growing it. Some of them didn't, so we've just exited them and grown out. So it's just been a little bit of a step by step. Marie owns a little bit more, Marie put a bit more money in, Marie put, a little bit more investment in. And it was just through opportunities that arisen, or the vision, or customers came to us and said, can you do this? So it's just sort of evolved. I'm not going to take credit for being planned.
Do you ever wake up on the first day of the month, like Monday next week, and think, oh my goodness, I've got all these mortgages to pay, I've got all this responsibility? Does it ever overwhelm you?
Yes, it does. And quite frankly, through COVID was worse. We weren't in the greatest position in businesses, like a lot. We have struggled. We have faced a lot of challenges. Exiting the shareholders and moving sites was costly. It was investment that I didn't plan. But the vision that you see behind me is what's kept me going. But yeah, it does give you sleepless nights as a business owner. It is the responsibility on your head, but it is all about driving the team of people that support actually making things happen and working with me. Not for me. All
right. And Rachel, what's your view when you look around the businesses you're working with in the appetite for risk? Now, we all know that banks are a little more cautious than they used to be. And we know that the government will fund when it can, but, resources are small. But in the end, it boils down to the owner, the person in the arena, like Marie, and their appetite to risk, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think I must attract the risk takers. I guess I guess for me, it's about planning that risk to a degree. So some things are opportunist, like Marie said, but I think also you've got to have a strategy around that. And actually, what do you want to do as a business? And I have quite a lot of these conversations. And I actually always comes back to me that it's about knowing people, knowing the sectors that I'm going into, and knowing maybe actually some of the opportunities that could come their way. I'm kind of the queen of networking, really. And if I think of, organisations they can talk to or partner with, and maybe look at, joint ventures. One of my other clients, I wrote a paper for a joint venture because I saw a commercial opportunity. They maybe don't have the appetite for risk at the moment, but I think that's to do with, to be fair, the economic, political environment. But sometimes that actually provides a benefit as well. But I guess it's planning that. So it's getting them to just see a little bit differently often is the case.
Well, Rachel, Marie, it's been a great pleasure talking to you on the Northern Business Podcast. I'm sure I'll have you both back if you will come back and talk about your experiences. The best of luck to you, and thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks to the podcast producer, Harry Sinclair, and my technical operator, Robin Campbell. Join us next time. Never miss an episode by liking and rating and subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.